Ladies and gentlemen, I am back. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Parker. Thank you for taking a few minutes to spend some time with me today. Today, I'm going to be doing my 2.0 mock draft, 7-round mock draft for the Broncos. The last time I did one of these, the Broncos did not have our first round pick. Of course, we got that in the Bradley Chubb trade. So here is my mock draft. Now, keep in mind, I'm drafting players based on my rankings, and the computer's kind of a goober when it comes to doing these 7-round mock drafts. So just keep in mind that maybe some of these players will be taken earlier in the draft, maybe some will be taken later, but these are guys who I like. And of course, free agency hasn't happened, and the Broncos are going to obviously try to fill a majority of those needs in free agency so they can draft the best player available in the draft. So just keep that in mind. Free agency hasn't happened yet. So this is just what I think, and I like the value of these picks. As always, I want to remind you that Jesus is King. I pray that you give your life to him. He's got a plan and a purpose for you. And I just hope that you believe with your whole heart that Jesus died on the cross for your sins. And if you truly do believe that, and you've truly accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior, then you'll go to heaven. It's that simple. It's that easy. As a Christian, I do feel it's important to share this message with as many people as possible. And a lot of people aren't going to like it, but I don't care, because I think it's important to share the good news of God and how to be saved and how to get to heaven. Now, let's jump into this mock draft here. First up, with the 20th overall pick, I have the Broncos selecting Paris Johnson Jr., the offensive tackle out of Ohio State. He's the number 2 offensive tackle, in my opinion, in this draft class. At number 1, I have Peter Skoronski, who it's honestly become really close between Peter Skoronski and Paris Johnson for me. Peter Skoronski, I like the talent. His arms are just so short, and I know that's the concern they had about Rashawn Slater, who both of them went to Northwestern, but I don't know, his arms are way shorter than Rashawn Slater, so that just makes me a little bit nervous. I really like Paris Johnson out of Ohio State. I think he's going to be a solid tackle. Now, of course, he could definitely be taken before this spot right here, and if he is, then it's probably going to be someone like a Broderick Jones. But as of right now, I have Paris Johnson out of the Ohio State University coming to the Broncos. I think this would be a solid pick. You put him at right tackle with Bulls at left, and then later down the road when we eventually move on from Garrett Bulls, because he is up there in age with just him being, he redrafted him, and he was old coming out of the draft. So even though he hasn't been in the league that long, he is up there in age. So eventually he could slide over to left tackle. But as of right now, getting that solid right tackle is going to be very, very important for the Broncos. He's 6'6", 315 pounds, and he's a beast for Ohio State. Next up, the Broncos don't have a pick until the 3rd round. And with the 75th overall pick in the 3rd round, I have the Broncos selecting John Michael-Schmitz, a center out of Minnesota. He's 6'4", 320 pounds. And the reason why I have the Broncos drafting a center, okay? I know a lot of Broncos fans aren't happy with Lloyd Cushenberry and how he's been playing, and I understand that. And I do think Lloyd Cushenberry is solid. However, I don't know if the Broncos are going to bring back Lloyd Cushenberry just because of the fact he has struggled. He's on injured reserve right now. And so to me, maybe the Broncos say, you know what, Lloyd, we're going to move on. You have Graham Glasgow on the roster who could play center. You got Quinn Miners, who you drafted in 2021, who could play center. You got Luke Wattenberg, who can play center. But to me, I like Quinn Miners at guard. I like Luke Wattenberg as kind of a backup guard center to fill in if you need him not to be a full-time starter. Graham Glasgow, I can't remember. I don't know if he'll be on the roster when Lloyd Cushenberry's contract expires at the end of next season. I can't remember how long we signed him for, but getting someone like a John Michael-Schmitz to fill in and be our center, I think is very, very solid. He is a beast out of Minnesota. So next season, of course, he would probably, him and Lloyd Cushenberry would compete for the starting center role. And then, even if he loses out, he'll be the understudy to Lloyd Cushenberry. If he gets hurt, then he'll go in and play. And then if we don't re-sign Lloyd Cushenberry, then it's John Michael-Schmitz line, and he'll be the center for that offensive line. So I like John Michael-Schmitz out of Minnesota. He's my top center in this year's draft. There's not really that great interior offensive linemen. There's not great guards. There's not great centers in this draft. So I think we could get the value of John Michael-Schmitz here in the 3rd round. And then a few picks later, at pick 77, I have a selected Garrett Williams, cornerback out of Syracuse. To me, I have a 1st-round grade on Garrett Williams. I think he should be a 1st-round pick, but the computer had him available here at 77 because I don't think a lot of people are as high on Garrett Williams as I am. I would love to get Garrett Williams on the team now. I know a lot of you fellow Broncos fans are going to say, well, we don't need a corner right now, Parker. We're set. Yeah, we're set for now. I mean, but then in a few years, the only corners that are going to be under contract that are on their current contracts are going to be Patrick Surtain and Damari Mathis. Michael-Schmitz's contract comes up in a couple seasons. Ronald Darby has 1 year left after this season. There are so many other corners on the team. Kawan Williams' contract is up. So it might not be a problem as of right now, but we're definitely not going to be able to keep everybody with our cap situation. So we are going to have to draft and get some younger guys. We, of course, have Patrick Surtain, who's going to be a Bronco for a long time. We got Damari Mathis, who I really like. We'll see if we bring back Michael-Schmitz. We'll see if we bring back Ronald Darby. We'll see if we bring back a Kawan Williams. I think we should definitely address a corner in this draft somewhere. I also wouldn't mind us. I know this is a different video, but I would love us to go after my top target that I want the Broncos to go after is cornerback Amani Oruwariye from the Lions, but that's for a later different video. I think getting another cornerback for the future is going to be very beneficial for the Broncos. In 28 games played with the Syracuse Orange, he has 115 solo tackles, 37 assist tackles for 152 total tackles. He has 4 picks and 21 passes defended. I wouldn't mind Garrett Williams playing opposite of Patrick Surtain. So you have Garrett Williams and Patrick Surtain as your outside cornerbacks. And then you have Damari Mathis is someone who I think he could play in the slot, or he could play as that 3rd outside boundary corner. Or even, of course you have Justin Simmons and Caden Stearns. I think Damari Mathis is someone who you could also move back and play that Kareem Jackson type role at safety if you wanted him to. But I wouldn't mind the top 3 cornerbacks for the Broncos being Surtain, Garrett Williams, and Damari Mathis. I think that would be a tremendous, tremendous cornerback trio. Next up in the 4th round, I have us selecting Servakia Dennis, linebacker out of Pittsburgh. To me, it's no secret that the Broncos need linebacker help. Of course, you got Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton, who's really stepped up his game. You got Jonas Griffith, who I really like. Hopefully, they address the linebacker position in free agency, but we'll see, because the linebacker position, the middle linebacker position, is kind of like the running back. It's kind of dying out. I mean, you saw Roquan Smith, who's one of the best middle linebackers in the game. He didn't get traded for a whole lot. It's like it was a 2nd round pick and then a late round pick. So it's crazy. And to me, getting someone like a Servakia Dennis, sure, he's not super great in pass coverage, which I think the Broncos would ideally like to improve on. There is no linebackers who are great at playing zone coverage and dropping back into zone that I liked at this pick necessarily. I think if we could trade, obviously this is a no trade mock draft, but if we could trade up a little bit, or if we traded back a little bit, there's some other linebackers of more positional value or that were more valuable at either an earlier pick or a later pick that are better at zone coverage. But since this is a no trade one, I have us addressing that and getting Servakia Dennis out of Pittsburgh. I mean, you could see how much of a beast he is in 32 games with the Pittsburgh Panthers. 104 solo tackles, 100 assists, 204 total tackles, 33.5 tackles for loss, and 14 sacks. Yeah, I would love us to address the linebacker core, especially after not addressing it last draft. In the 5th round, I have us selecting Chris Rodriguez Jr., running back out of Kentucky. Now, many Broncos fans, you might be saying, well, why would we go for another running back? Well, here's the thing. Javonte Williams, who I think is a beast, who's obviously our running back 1, Is he going to come back at the start of the next season? I don't know about that. He has a torn ACL, I think like a torn PCL. I think he'll come back at some point next season. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be at the start of next season. We, of course, got Chase Edmonds, who's under contract for one more year after this season. But Mike Boone, Melvin Gordon, Latavius Murray, and Marlon Mack, all those running backs who are currently with the Broncos, are going to be free agents. I think even Divine Xingbo is going to be a free agent. So we need to address the running back position. I think, of course, we have Javonte Williams. He might stay on IR for the first few games of next season while he still recovers from that ACL. Then you have Chase Edmonds. Then I would love grabbing a guy like Chris Rodriguez here who can help in the run game and the pass game. And then maybe keep one of those four running backs. I'd say probably you keep Mike Boone out of that group. But with the Kentucky Wildcats, Rodriguez has been a beast. In 37 games, he has 533 rushing attempts for 3,310 yards and 31 rushing touchdowns. But he also has 20 receptions for 116 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he can't help in the receiving game. He's a little bit smaller. He's a 5'11", but it's a good contrast with Javonte Williams for the future, because I don't know if we would re-sign Chase Edmonds in a couple years down the road. But he would be that nice contrast. Javonte Williams, the power back, and you got kind of elusive back, receiving back in Chris Rodriguez out of Kentucky. Then in the 6th round, with our final pick in the draft, I have us selecting P.J. Mustipher, defensive tackle out of Penn State. I think D.J. Jones is going to be our clear-cut number 1 defensive tackle, but then behind him, who do we really have? We got Mike Purcell, who's up there in age. You got Deshaun Williams, who's up there in age. Sure, we drafted last year Matt Henningsen, and Ioma Uwazurike, but I feel like those guys are more defensive ends and not necessarily defensive tackles, because we got to remember the Broncos run a 3-4, so the outside linebackers come off the edge, and then you have the defensive ends, who I think Uwazurike and Henningsen are more defensive ends and not necessarily that defensive nose tackle. So behind DJ Jones, I'd like to get a young guy such as PJ Mustipher out of Penn State. He's played 45 games with the Nittany Lions, and he's got that veteran experience. He's a little bit older, but he's also got that experience that you could help use on the team. He's got 64 solo tackles, 69 assist tackles, 133 total tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. Well, that is going to be my 7-round mock draft. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I will, of course, be doing these. I'll probably try and get one out once every week, just because, of course, we have the 49ers first-round pick, so we got to be watching them carefully, and I feel like it will be fun to experiment to see what players could potentially be available at the picks that we're picking at. What I might do next week is I will do one where the Broncos trade up in the draft, one where the Broncos stay put in the draft, and one where the Broncos trade back in the draft, just to see different scenarios that Broncos fans could expect on draft night in a while down the road in April. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Parker, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.